So when I'm playing board games, the visuals are very, very important to me. And I understand this is part personal taste, but also it depends on the type of board game itself. What's the setting? Sci-fi, dungeon crawler, Euro. It needs to be functional, but it also needs to pull me in to the narrative. I want to be pulled into narrative. That moment, and for me, this is why analog play is so important, to have everything set up, to have all the cards laid out. And when it's my turn, playing solo or with a group, not taking too long. I don't want to be hit with analysis paralysis or just sit there thinking forever, but to be able to step back a little bit and feel like I'm in the world, feel like that storyline, that I'm a part of it. The components and the visuals are a direct way into that multiverse for me. I mean, that's the excitement of solo board games. On the opposite end, I also love board gaming because it's a way to engage with the community. It's a way to roll some dice, make some memories, and play some games with some friends. But within that, component colors are important. And I think these are things that we need to take into consideration, or one of the things that when I'm looking at certain figures, tokens, markers, what's important. Now I'm going to digress a little bit because scale and understanding how colors interact, and I know I'm generalizing, it is important. Wargamers know this. Certain figures that are exactly the same, painted differently, look vastly different, and it depends on the scale. Here's a perfect example, Battletech. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know I love Battletech, very passionate about it. If you don't know what Battletech is, it's a sci-fi miniature-based game. You don't need miniatures to play it, but it's usually played with miniatures of these robots, these mechs, these giant war machines. And it's a space opera set in the future, different factions, different mercenary companies. These battle mechs are painted a variety of different colors. Some of them are very much like field colors, camouflage colors, very workhorse functional colors, but other ones are parade colors, bright yellow, reds and greens with all sorts of symbols on them because, well, you're a giant mech. Are you really going to hide? But also to show your affiliation because it's very much Knights of the Realm. So how that translates out, one of the first Battletech companies that I painted, so I have my miniatures. I'm very, very excited, and I'm going to paint them up. I went for this kind of dark green color pattern based on World War I ships, meaning having the dark color, but then have the different colored angles and the different ways of painting things to hopefully break it up on the horizon. So I got very realistic. But given the size of the mech when it's down on the table, certain colors in that scale are a little bit darker. They're a little bit more muted. Compared to other mechs that I play with my friends, they use yellows, they use reds for the factions, Karita and Davian. Two mechs, exactly the same model, something will pop more if it's yellow than it will if it's green. And by popping more, the detail pulls out more, and the mech looks framed, more imposing, bigger, even though it could literally be the exact same mech. You could take two Battle Masters. So over the years, noticing that, when I look at board gaming components, the colors of the miniatures are important. Now, more and more we're getting to pre-painted miniatures. And I think eventually we'll settle into this hybrid system of two types. You can buy the base set, and the D&D Adventure Series already do that. You can buy the base set, or you could buy the painted set for more money. Maybe one day, Zombicide Infinity will include painted miniatures at some point like that. But from that perspective, for the most part, miniatures are not painted for board games. You could paint your own. What we see more and more are faction-specific colors, like utilizing the new Hero Quest. The heroes are red. The kind of chaos dudes seem to be kind of a gray. The orcs are green. The undead naturally are white. And this is a great way to have some basic colors, to have certain aspects stand out so you kind of know who they are, where they are, and give a little bit of a splash on the table. But I have noticed board games that have regular-sized miniatures, when they're printed in yellows or they're printed in other colors, because it's plastic and it's not highlighted, it's not painted, it kind of washes out. or it takes away from the detail. Some of the factions, now maybe this is an older edition of TI, Twilight Imperium that I have, same models, same little miniatures, but different colored factions stand out more than others. Technology right there to make your faction look bigger, even if you're losing on the table. But that's one of the things that I look at. What do the miniatures look like? What colors do they look like? And how is that going to impact in the game? A great example was Dungeon Saga. Before I painted my miniatures, the monster miniatures were the appropriate gray color, or they were, the bosses were gray, the undead, and most of the undead were white, so that makes total sense. You're going into this kind of undead dwarven realm. But the heroes, they were blue. And the detail was fantastic, but the blue kind of muted it a little bit, kind of washed it out a little bit. Now I painted up my Dungeon Saga miniatures because the Mantic did a great job with the visuals on it. As soon as I painted them, they look fantastic. But that's something in terms of components that it took me a while to realize. It took me a while to be able to see and understand, like, why do certain components pop more than others? It does depend on the size and the color. Your thoughts on that? So we're pulling in the visuals. And if you paint your own miniatures and board games, that doesn't count because that now pushes it into a completely different category. What are some of those color combinations that work? And what are some of those color combinations based on the scale just don't work? And sometimes you can't avoid it because if you're playing multi-factions, 5 to 6 factions per game, if it's a conquest-type game or a conquest-type system, then at some point you're going to run out of the primaries and you just have to decide what is that going to be.